Have you ever wondered how the clutter in your home might be affecting your mental health and well being? Is it possible that we can feel less stressed by reducing clutter? Well, you're about to find out. My guest today is Jessica Dunn, realtor, listing specialist, and declutter extraordinaire. And she's going to help us find clarity, space, protect the environment, and put money back in our wallets. Welcome to the show, Jessica.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.
So let's dive right into this. Does clutter affect mental health?
Of course it does. Of course it does. I always feel like I am a realtor, like you had said. I've been a realtor for 16 years, and my key role now is to help get listings looking great. And that means 90% of the time decluttering. And every single time I do this, the owner comes back into their house and they take a deep breath and they were like, why haven't we been living like this entire time? It's like I feel calmer, I feel lighter, I just feel like I'm at home when there's all the other stuff around me, and there's something to it. Absolutely, for sure.
Do you think that it gets worse in time, our clutter? Like here we are, at least I'm in midlife.
Right.
Does it get worse? Does the clutter just build when we're not looking, kind of a thing? Or why does it seem so bad at this point right now?
Especially with midlife. Well, I always find that if you live like this all your life, you might not even notice it's happening around you, and you might not see it build over time. I almost connect it with the old Febreze commercials where you become nose blind to odors in your house. You subconsciously become blind to the stuff around you too. I find that in midlife, I'm going to count maybe say between the ages of 40 and 60, there is a lot going on in your life that you may not even notice that it's happening. So you are probably working still, or you're still a stay-at-home mom with lots to juggle. You're probably worrying about your parents. You may be helping your young adult kids with their kids. And it's just, there's just so much going on in your life. And guess what else is happening? Hormone changes, which definitely impacts your ability to multitask, your ability to focus. And you also have so much more issues with anxiety, depression, all because we are not making as much estrogen as we used to if you're in perimenopause or menopause. So yes, absolutely. When you're in midlife, this stuff feels way harder than you probably ever had. Even if you had like you had lots of kids, probably felt easier to manage at that point in your life. But if you're hitting midlife, you're definitely feeling that extra, I would say, I find it an extra brain fog. I feel like it's an extra layer on me because of the lack of estrogen being produced.
And then I suppose there's factors like, grandparents perhaps are passing away or parents are going into condos and there's stuff they don't want to get rid of. So they're saying, Lisa, can you take this very special thing? Right. So are we maybe
Yeah.
bringing on or bringing into our homes more things that weren't here
Oh
before?
yeah, absolutely. That's happening for sure. Because we kind of feel guilty not taking things sometimes.
Mhm.
And we live in a time now where consuming is so easy to do. We, as an average family, I think the number is we have an average of 300,000 items in our household. Compare that to a generation before us. That's like insane. So to think that if we have 300,000 items in our home, that those are just possessions, not all the mental clutter you have in your head, but 300,000 items you have that needs care, needs cleaning, needs upkeep, and just needs constant, to making sure your things are getting taken care of. Like that's an obscene amount of things to be dealing with on a regular basis. So yes, and also the consuming part is so huge. I feel like we are bombarded by 5,000 ads a day. So like it's never been so apparent to our mental health that we are constantly getting hit by things to say, Buy this so your life is easier. Buy this so you're prettier. Buy this so you're smarter. Buy this so you don't feel like crap, right? So, if you get bombarded by these ads all the time, whether it's on your phone, whether that's on TV, whether that's on radio, wherever you are, you're getting hit, billboards even, right? Like it's so tough to not buy things and hit add to cart, right? So you're bringing all this influx of stuff coming in and not necessarily taking the stuff out. And that's where the clutter gets really intense is when you are bringing too much in and you're having trouble letting it old stuff go, because that's when it starts to really pile up.
Is there a point when we start to notice it? Like you say, things can be happening and we're not even aware of it. We're not seeing it really. Is there a tipping point? And then are we seeing that? Are we seeing the mental health part of that first? Or how does that transpire?
They're very interconnected, I would say. I find, and I help a lot of moms with ADHD. They kind of hit a tipping point when they're just having piles and piles of stuff accumulate around them, and they can't physically handle the stuff anymore, which means they have no mental space or the capacity to handle the day-to-day living, and that's their tipping point usually. I find that the seniors, they may not notice it as much because it's a little bit at a time, and it's accumulated so long over a long period of time, that they don't, like I said, they don't notice it as much. And even though they might not notice it subconsciously, it is triggering them to saying that work is never done. And even though they see the stuff, stuff on the counters, stuff on the stairway, stuff in their living room and their offices, they might just feel like it's normal, but deep inside your nervous system is saying stuff needs to get done, and it does impact your mental health for sure.
So that segues perfectly into my next question. When you and I met a couple of weeks ago just to talk about what this episode was going to look like, you touched a little bit on different personality types. So there's the personality types, but then there's certain underlying things. Like, I don't know if I'm truly OCD, but I am definitely fall into the perfectionist category and, maybe leaning a little bit more towards OCD. But then, as you said, there's certain folks that have ADHD and other things like that. How does that play into this whole idea of organization and what kinds of things get in their way?
Yeah, so this is very fascinating to me. I have a daughter that has been diagnosed with ADHD, so I'm no expert or doctor by any means, but I can tell you what I've experienced and how I work with people with ADHD. Both OCD and ADHD fall under this umbrella that's called neurodivergence. There's lots of different diagnoses under that umbrella: anxiety, depression, OCD, autism. Um, Personality disorders, bipolar. It's quite a big, vast of umbrella. And with people with ADHD, we find that organization is one of the toughest things that their brain really struggles with. Their brains are just wired differently. The two things that I would maybe consider with organization is that their executive functioning, and not everybody, but their executive functioning is very, very, that's where they struggle the most, I would say. So for example, when you say like, oh, I got to go do the laundry today, you just go and do it. Where somebody with ADHD sees it as like the most epic, overwhelming task that they could possibly think of, because they are thinking about every single little step that is involved to have to do that. And it just gets so overwhelming that they don't even know where to start, or the decision paralysis starts to happen and they just freeze and just leave it. And then that's where things start to get a little bit hazy. And so if you're doing like a daily task like that, it's a big struggle. And you have to break things into little tasks. For example, when I tell my daughter, you can't just tell her, go clean your room. That's just that's too broad of a task for her to even grasp. You have to break it down into little chunks. So it'd be like, okay, let's put your stuffies away. Let's put your clothes in the basket. Let's make your bed. So like we're making it into small little chunks. things like cleaning and organization aren't super fun tasks for a lot of people, especially with ADHD. So you have to make those things fun too. So, for example, when we do laundry, my daughter, we don't say, let's go do your laundry. We say, let's go feed Greg. And Greg is our laundry, he's our washing machine. So she's feeding him and like putting in soap and like we have to make a game, almost gamify it. And that gives her an extra sense of dopamine that her brain is needing to complete that task. So there's a lot to it with organization with ADHD, and it really boils down to the struggles with executive functioning and figuring out ways to get that ball rolling in small little chunks. Whereas in OCD, that's a whole different ball game. That's like almost like a whole different side of the spectrum where you are craving control and it needs to be a specific way. Otherwise, it paralyzes you in a certain way. Like for some people, I know that like they can't start work unless their desk is set in a perfect way. Sometimes they need to tap 1, 2, 3, lock the door. They can't leave the house until those things happen. So when you say you're a little like that's maybe a little bit different, but like people with serious diagnoses, it could like being on one side of the spectrum could be paralyzing just as bad as the other. And most of us fall like in a neurotypical way where it's just a matter of us getting a little too far behind. But some people really struggle on a daily basis and feel a lot of guilt and shame with it. And it's not laziness. You just have your brain is wired than different people. That's all.
Well, in my own personal experience, I feel like, as you mentioned at the very beginning, as midlife moms, we have got, I don't know how many balls in the air at any given time. And, when there's that one little clutter pile that's starting to grow, or I have a counter that's where my landline used to sit, but it's just a small counter. It's kind of the first piece of counter when you walk in the kitchen. It's really easy to put the things there. And when I had both kids living at home and my husband and myself, and we were getting a lot more physical mail, I would start to like gyrate and shake. And after a point in time saying, if this counter isn't cleaned up by 7 o'clock, it's all going in the recycle bin.
Right.
And, you know, but I think that because we have all these balls in the air, it's really easy to make a neat pile of stuff, make it a little bit more presentable, but
Right. Yeah.
not deal with it because, in the order of maybe importance, sometimes
Right.
it doesn't fall high enough to deal with it.
Right. No, I definitely see that. I'll see that in my house too. I find like there's certain things like at the end of the night, I want my counters cleaned because then I can fall asleep better. And I know that the work is done. I don't need another thing on my plate tomorrow morning before like especially during when school time is on and like that school routine is intense as it is. I don't need to clean up last night's stuff. So it's just like it's almost like a reset to start the day fresh the next day. And I think a lot of women have that to-do list in their head and whatever they can tackle ahead of time, whether it's small jobs or big jobs, they will do whatever they can to get that load off. And that's why living with less to begin with helps you significantly. Um, I always say the less that you have in your house, the more space you have physically, but you also have all this extra space mentally to deal with the big stuff that's about to hit too, especially during midlife, because you're going to be bombarded, whether you like it or not, it's coming for you. And it's you just having the less amount of physical things to deal with will give you the time, space, and energy to do the big work, that needs to really be done to help with your mental health.
So I think you've probably convinced everybody, you've convinced me that, less is more. And I'm already thinking about some of the piles I've got to sort through. But what are some practical steps, some tips, some strategies that we can all put into place to start minimizing those doom piles, as you call them?
Yeah, the doom piles all over the house. I always say doom piles are just a pile of unmade decisions.
Hmm.
And I feel like what I think where a lot of people trip up or end up just being, oh, it's just gonna end up like this next week anyway, why bother? It's because they try to do it all at once. And or they confuse clutter, tidying with cleaning. And those are two different things. What I mean when I say tidy or declutter, I'm saying like we need to physically get rid of things or let's find a designated home for them. So I'd say if you're just starting, like in your house is like you maybe have 40 years of accumulation, or you have 3 kids and you have just your house is exploded with toys and all of their stuff. I would just say start small and maybe do something that's not sentimental. I would say maybe a junk drawer and just stop. The Tupperware drawer, that's a good spot. Just stop after that. Even your purse or maybe your console in your garage. Doing little things and gaining the confidence of knowing how to like sift and figure out, okay, this is where this is the home for this thing. I'm going to donate this, I'm going to sell this, this is going in the garbage. So once you get a better handle of how to do that on small tasks, you're going to feel a little bit more confident, you're going to get that snowball going, and you're going to feel like you can tackle pretty much your entire house. It took me when I did this whole living with less thing, I started myself when my daughter was 4, my youngest was 4, just before COVID actually hit. And it took me an entire year to do my 1,700 square foot house. So like, and I took lots of breaks because there is a lot of sentimental things in my house. Both my husband and my dad have passed away. So we have a lot of things that we had to sift through there, all the baby stuff, like, you have so many things that are really sometimes hit home, but you're not really doing anything with them. So you have to come to terms with them and decide, is this something that's serving me? Am I honoring this thing or not? So I would just say start small and focus on your things too. Like, don't be going and decluttering your husband's garage without his knowledge, even if you kind of want to do it sometimes. That's not your place to do. I found once I started this, my girls are really taking notice, and they were seeing how much gratitude I had towards the things I was keeping. And I made sure they came with me when we started donating stuff because they needed to see where our things were going and why it was so important to give back to our community. And that really severed some of that emotional attachment to material things. Like your kids can have 30 stuffies. Like, why do they need 30 stuff? Like it's out of control, right? But if they can see, if they say they donate 5 of them and they can really see where that's going, like we take them to the North Central Family Center, for example, and they see what their stuff is going towards, so that these kids have barely anything, and we have a crazy excess amount of things. It just made it feel like they were prepared and excited to do it the next time. So that would be another tip I would give if you have kids. Aging parents is a whole different ballgame. That one can be tricky. And that's where a professional declutter could come in and help in those scenarios. But even just having the conversation with your aging loved one is a good start, like a good icebreaker, you know?
Well, let's circle back to the emotional attachment stuff because I think that there's kind of two different ways or two different ways to talk about this. And one is the emotional attachment. I
Mhm.
might be attached to certain things for some reason, but then there
Right.
might be a sentimental thing that you think you should be attached to, like grandma passed away. I got her favorite, punch bowl. I never use the punch bowl. I don't love the punch bowl, but I feel like it should be important,
Right.
so that's kind of two different things that we have to deal with.
And then you have the
We
guilt there too,
The
right?
guilt, right? The
Mhm.
guilt. And how can we deal with some of this guilt and let things go? Or do
Right.
we have to pack them in the box and keep them forever and a day and pass them
I
on
know.
to our kids?
I know. And this is why these conversations ahead of time are so important. Like, grandma, what do you love? What do you like? What are you wanting to pass on? And maybe it's like, could be a difficult conversation, but maybe she thought you loved that punch bowl and you don't care about it. And maybe she would have given it to somebody else, right? Those conversations just aren't had. Like, we just don't talk about what happens when someone passes, and where do I want my things to go, and why is it so important to somebody, and like those conversations should be done well ahead of time. You never know when the day is coming, right? But I would say, going back to the attachment thing, a lot of us are attached for different reasons. And it's not the actual material object, right? Like it's that time and place and scenario that you miss. So for example, my daughter's baby blanket is one thing. Like I think that a lot of people like want to hold on to that and just to maybe give it to her at one point, maybe. I don't know. But it's not the actual blanket that I'm really attached to. It's those moments where I snuggled with her, excuse me, where she was, you comforted her, you were her go-to girl, like person. Like those are the things that you're really attached to. So maybe maybe keeping a piece of it and framing it, or maybe you're holding on to a picture with her with it instead of the actual physical material. I always say, like, it's okay to be attached to things and keep things. I just think it's such a I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, but it feels like it's such a disservice of putting all those things that you think are important to you, shoving it in a box and putting it in a basement. What good does that have? Like, if there's something that's really important to you and you cherish, let's find a way to honor it. So maybe we're putting a photo book together. Maybe we're making a shadow box of like a jersey. Maybe we are creating like a stuffy out of grandpa's shirts, like things that we know that are going to like make us feel and remember that person or that place, as opposed to the actual physical thing. And I just find if you can't find a way to honor it, then that's your indicator. It's time to let it go to somebody that really needs it. And I think that's where I help people too, is I know what the need is in our city. Like food scarcity, homelessness is a huge problem in our city. And if we can connect and tell an aging loved one, do you know there's a single mother that is desperate for all of your sheets right now? Or if it's something for like blankets, or all like the 7 spatulas that they have in their kitchen. Like if they know that they could do some really good in the community, usually that emotional attachment can be severed, because it's not really about the thing. It's usually about the memory of the person, place, or thing, right?
Absolutely. I was just thinking myself, after Katie died, we still have her bedroom here. We
Mhm.
don't have to really get rid of anything because we have the space for it. Although I
Right.
have sorted through things. And right after she died, I called it a closet party.
Yeah.
And I opened it up. It was kind of an open house for all of her friends to stop
Oh,
by
yeah.
and, take something of Katie's. I kind of pilfered a little pile for myself
Right. Like
first.
stuff for you.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't have this. But
Yeah.
she had, oh my gosh, she had enough stuff to fill up her own department store, I swear. But so the girls would come and, some took a few things, some took more and all that kind of thing. And then, I'm ready now, like for some of the t-shirts and jeans and things, because she had like 17 pairs of them, to make something out of them. Now I'm not a gifted sewer, but I know that there are sewers around that would make beautiful quilts out of all the graphic t-shirts, right?
Yeah, that'd be
Or
cool. What
some
a
really
great way
cool.
to honor her, like having her friends
Absolutely.
come there and pick out the things that they resonate with Katie. Like that, you couldn't have picked a better way to honor her things. And like, what a wow. I hope if anything that your audience gets out of this podcast today is that one thing, is just how to honor the things that you have in your home. Like, wow, that's so special. Well, you got me, I'm getting all emotional here. That was so
But I
amazing.
think, just to circle back a little bit, it's about being creative. Like you say, it's not like you've got too many spatulas, 6 of them have to go in the garbage. Because I
Yeah,
think that all makes us bristle a little bit, right? Like, can't do that. But if we
right,
can think a little bit creatively, or repackage it to make it into a meaningful gift for somebody.
right.
Like my son has moved out now. I've thought about doing some kind of a denim thing for him, like some denim cushion covers or something that were
Yeah.
Katie's. And, it just makes it a little bit easier and frankly, more meaningful.
Yes. Yeah. I agree 1000%. That's so great.
So, what are some common pitfalls, common mistakes? Like, I think maybe if I've been listening to you here, that taking on too much might be maybe
Yeah.
not a great thing to do. What are some other
Yeah.
things?
I would say if you are helping an elderly loved one, um, doing an intervention is an absolute zero. Like, do not do it. Like, you're gonna get the most biggest pushback ever. I would say lead with compassion and let your aging loved one go through the motions and give yourself a ton of time. People do not give themselves enough time to sift through the things because they don't even know what they have half the time. So when I go and help people when they list their house, they're like, okay, we'll be ready for photos on Friday. And I'm like, it's Wednesday. I'm like, no, you're not gonna, like, you're not even close to being ready. There's so much stuff in this home, or like even for possession day when they think they have so much time to move and they don't realize how much stuff they have. So one thing is they seriously underestimate the amount of time it's going to take to get through their things. Somebody taking over and doing the work when the aging loved one is there and is capable of making decisions themselves. That's a big no-no. Do not do that. And just doing it all at once is just could be, I was, especially if you have have ADHD, that's gonna be like you're gonna get into it. Like I see this happen all the time where people are like, I'm gonna like purge my closet today. And then they like get like 3 hours in and they're done. Like they're mentally spent and then they're stuck looking and like it's looking worse than it did before you even started, right? So just giving yourself more time than you think and breaking things into little chunks is your best bet of um, really sifting through and being hyper aware of what you really need versus what you think you want is a big one.
Right. Now, you had talked a little bit about being maybe living more of a minimalistic lifestyle. And I think what I see is a little bit of a sliding spectrum, right? Like there's no clear definition of what minimalistic living is like. But if
Right.
someone is curious about becoming more minimalistic and maybe purchasing less, how do we rein in that awareness when it comes to purchasing? Like you say, we're bringing way too much into the home. It's
Right.
not just getting rid of it, it's bringing it in.
It's bringing it in. And that's where I see the biggest hurdle is the bringing it in because it's crazy. Um, I would say what happened with me, I'll just kind of maybe go through my own personal experience and how I find living with less just helps me in every facet of my health, whether it's my physical health, because now I have time to work out. I have more time to help out my community. I have more money in my wallet because I'm not spending, and just more room in my brain to handle big complex issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. I find, yeah, like there was a time in my life where I was running around getting Sam to dance. I had like picked up Eva from daycare, and if we forgot to take something out for supper, and I opened my fridge and like this pungent smell just hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was like just a bag of salad that went bad and we didn't even get to use it. And what physically made me sick, not just the smell, was Sam watching me throw that food right into the garbage can as if it was a normal thing. Like, and I was equating it to throwing like dollar bills
Mhm.
into the garbage. And right, it was like I had that epiphany moment where it's like things have to change in our house. I don't want my kids ever thinking that this is normal. Um, I feel like I was overscheduled and couldn't handle everything. And I wasn't even aware of how much we were spending. So I just focused on my kitchen and it was eye-opening. So I focused and tracked how much we were actually spending, who was doing the work in the kitchen, for example, and we were like watching behaviors like, are we cooking too much? Nobody was eating leftovers. how much are we eating out? Why do I have 17 spatulas? Things like this, right? So I was really being hyper aware and being almost like a social detective in my kitchen. I just focused on the kitchen for the time being. And that year I ended up saving our family $5,200 in groceries just by focusing on food waste and just being more intentional about meal planning and getting the family to help out. And it wasn't just solely on me, and it wasn't the mental load on myself. And then we expanded it to the whole house. And now my kids are 9 and 12 and are helping out in their capacity. But it's more about me and my partner, my husband, working hand in hand together and knowing what our strengths are. He's an amazing cook. So he does the cooking, I do the cleaning, the meal, and the kids help us with meal planning, help us with dishes, help us being a hostess and mixing salads. We just make it more of a family affair, and just bringing gratitude into the whole picture was huge. So I just found like that was my key, and that's living with less started to snowball throughout my entire house from there. And when you start to see all the benefits in all facets, not just your mental health, but everywhere, like I was really motivated when I saved that kind of money. And that was pre-COVID even, by the way. So I was like, this is damn, we can do some really hardcore savings here if I just was just a little bit more intentional of what I brought in the house. And I did a lot of research. I was following a lot of minimalists, and it really gravitated towards what I needed at that time as a young working mom.
That's brilliant. And when we circle back to the why, like
Yeah,
even if your only reason is to save $5,200,
I know, right?
that's huge.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
huge. Having our credit cards preloaded into our phones and our banking apps and everything,
Yes.
it's dangerous.
Yes, it's very difficult to watch. And especially if you're not communicating with your partner. There was times where we'd always double up on groceries because Lee would go earlier that day and pick up stuff, and then I would go after work and weren't talking. Just simple little things like that of like delegating. I almost kind of created like my kitchen was my business. Like it was my little restaurant or my little store. And who was the CEO? How did I delegate? Who was doing what and where? And we just focused on the things that we were strong at. And it's helped us significantly by reducing food waste. That was the biggest thing. I like me wasting food when our food scarcity in the city is astronomical, just broke my heart. Like it was like, and from then on, every month we would go and donate food to the community fridges. Like there's no reason why we need to be throwing away 30 to 40 to $50 a month on food just because we were careless of planning. Like there should be no reason for that. And I'm in a place of privilege where we can do that. So let's do better, and that's kind of where that was our whole philosophy running through our whole house. It was pretty magical experience, actually.
I can see how that would be really life-changing and how that would definitely change the way you look at consuming and all the things. So you have actually developed your own course around organizing the kitchen, reducing kitchen waste. You've got that available. You've got a little course on, I believe it's organizing your closet. Where can people go to find out more about these courses and the work that you do?
Sure. My website is athomewithjess.ca, and there you'll find a ton of tips and tricks through my blogs. But yes, what you're mentioning is that I developed like two self-paced online courses that you could take by yourself or with your spouse, or with your whole family. They're pretty short. They're both an hour long. You could do them in little chunks, or you could do it all at once. And it just kind of went through how I went through my house, how I help others with real estate, and what really sticks, what didn't stick. I'm not about going and making your house pretty, although that will be maybe an option that it might happen, but it's more about being functional and being helping you save time, money, and energy. So Yes, you can go do the home edit stuff and buy all the pretty organizational solutions out there, but that's not really what these courses are about. It's more about really deep diving, getting to the root cause of maybe why are you wasting food? What's going on in your kitchen that it's out of control for you? Closet kind of focuses on impulse buying and triggers and things that you can replace that dopamine hit with versus just going and shopping and trying to make yourself feel better. So those two courses are kind of cover different things and they're pretty affordable. The kitchen crasher is $150 and the closet cleanse is only 25. So lots of times people don't really love me coming into their homes because there is, again, a lot of guilt and shame that comes along with these things. So this is like just like a little starter kit if you want to try it yourself and do it on your own time. And if it ends up that you want me to come and help, I am available for one-on-ones, usually in the winter. Real estate is really busy right now in spring and summer, but once the winter hits, I have more time to come and do some one-on-ones and some consults to specific to your needs, whether it's like you need to focus on the garage or I do help with clutter and kids and helping with their playrooms and doing like sometimes a full blown the whole entire house sometimes we work on and that takes a lot of time. So yeah, that's there. And I definitely with real estate too, I help with that as well, where it's complimentary when you list with us that we help with decluttering because we know it's such an important part of selling. So yeah.
What a great service to tag on to. I love it. Jess, I have learned so much from you today, and I know that our listeners will be taking away some little nuggets of goodness out of this episode. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I love your podcast. I listen to it every time the new one hits. So I am so glad that we were able to connect and that our audiences can listen together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to my listeners, stay well and be resilient, and we'll catch you next time.